the queen the time forgot. She has been known by many names. Her name known best, Inanna. Innana is an ancient Mesopotamian goddess associated with love, beauty, sex, war, justice, and political power. She was originally worshipped in Sumer under the name Inanna, and was later worshipped by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians under the name Ishtar. Innana was known as one of the most important deities in the Sumerian religion. She was one of the most important of the seven: An, Enlil, Enki, Ninusag, Nanna, Utu, and Inanna. Welcome to the epic tales of the Anunnaki gods and goddesses. Female deities were worshipped and adored all through Sumerian history. But one goddess, who outweighed and overshadowed and outlasted them all, was the deity known as Queen of Heaven, Inanna. The goddess of the moon has been known by many names: Ishtar, Mari, Diana, Isis, Selene, Bridget, Sibyl, Shekinah, Lilith, Astarte, Venus, Inanna. Let's take a look at one woman's epic journey from early childhood into her womanhood and later into her old wise self. Her claim to power, status, and political justice. Inanna's hymn and poem, The Hulupu Tree. In the first days, in the very first days, in the first nights, in the very first nights, in the first years, in the very first years, in the first days when everything needed was brought into being, in the first days when everything needed was properly nourished, when the bread was baked in the shrines on the land, and bread was tasted in the homes of the land, when heaven had moved away from the earth, and earth had separated from heaven, and the name of man was fixed, when the sky god An had carried off the heavens, and the air god Enlil had carried off the earth, when the queen of the great below, Ereshkigal, was given the underworld for her domain. He set sail, the Father set sail. Enki, the god of wisdom, set sail for the underworld. Small windstones were tossed up against him. Large hailstones were hurled up against him. Like onrushing turtles, they charged the keel of Enki's boat. The waters of the sea devoured the bow, and of his boat like wolves. The waters of the sea struck the stern of his boat like lions. At that time, a single tree, a hulupu tree, was planted by the banks of the Euphrates. The tree was nurtured by the waters of the Euphrates. The whirling south wind arose, pulling at its roots and ripping at its branches, until the waters of the Euphrates carried it away. A woman who walked in fear of the word of the sky god An, who walked in fear of the word of the air god Enlil, plucked the tree from the river and spoke, I shall bring this tree to Uruk. I shall plant this tree in my holy garden. Uruk, the White Temple of Ziggurat. Anu's White Temple of Ziggurat at Uruk. The original pyramidal structure, the Anu Ziggurat, dates to around 4000 BCE, and the White Temple was built on top of it 3500 BCE. One of the most remarkable constructions, called the Innana, the limestone temple that was built on platforms of novel design and high construction techniques. The Innana district is historically significant both for its writing and its monumental public architecture. The combination of these two developments places Innana as arguably one of the first true cities and civilization in human history. The Innana district was composed of several buildings with spaces for workshops, and it was walled off from the city. The Anu district was built on a terrace with a temple at the top. Innana was dedicated to Inanna from the earliest Uruk period throughout the history of the city. The rest of the city was composed of typical courtyard houses, occupied by the professions of those that served Innana. In the districts and around the Innana and the Anu temples. Uruk was extremely well established, and it was connected by a canal system that has been described as a mini Venice in the desert. This canal system flowed throughout the city, connecting it with the maritime trade on the ancient Euphrates River, as well as the surrounding agricultural belt. In the myth and literature, Uruk was famous as the capital city of Gilgamesh, hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh, he who built the city walls of Innana. Mentioned as Uruk, the biblical Erech in Genesis, the second city founded by Nimrod in Shinar. Although Innana is not mentioned directly in the Bible by name, the Old Testament contains numerous suggestions to her cult. Jeremiah 7:18 and Jeremiah 44:15-19 mention the Queen of Heaven, who is probably a direct link of Inanna, Ishtar, and the West Semitic goddess Astarte. Jeremiah states that the Queen of Heaven was worshipped by women who baked cakes for her, butter cakes. They sang songs in Sumerian and love poems involving Inanna and Dumuzi. They used the usage of natural symbolism that represent lovers and physicality. Ezekiel mentions Inanna's husband, Dumuzi, under his later East Semitic name, Tammuz, and describes a group of women mourning the death of Tammuz while sitting in the north gate of the temple in Jerusalem. Inanna and Ishtar's most famous myth is the story of her descent into the return from Kir, the ancient Mesopotamian underworld. A myth in which she attempts to conquer the domain of her older sister, Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, but instead deemed guilty of hubris by the 7 judges of the underworld. Through many timelines, she has had many names. These are but a few: Aphrodite, Athena, Venus, Minerva, Astarte, Shekinah. There is also suggestions from critics rather than Assyriologists and scholars that the Virgin Mary, who describes her compassion and love for her son, and at the foot of the cross, in deeply personal items that closely resemble the goddess Ishtar, and her laments over the death of Tammuz. However we look at the comparisons, the mother, Mary was a place in Iraq. Could it be possibly that the mother, known from Mary, could have been misinterpreted as Innana, having her child in secret? Could the child known as Horus be the son of Ishtar, Inanna, Isis? The goddess appears the globe over. A statue of the Hindu goddess Durga, heavily armed with a lion at her side, slaying the buffalo demon. Durga's warrior aspects and associations with lion may be derived from the very same Inanna story. Durga may have also been influenced by Inanna. She was associated with sexuality, power, and war. The hymns and stories and epic tales of love, war, injustice that we have all become to know so well, told through many eyes and many lifetimes, over and over again. Her stories of the world's first love story, 2,000 years older than the Bible, that's tender, erotic, shocking and compassionate. It's sacred story that has the intention of bringing its audience to a new spiritual place. Innana and her first marriage rites, Innana and her claim to power, Innana and her descent into the underworld. A woman whose life has been portrayed through many different phases of her womanhood.